Not to go long. Sorry. So. You want that, you know? Now, which one, the teachers or the? Yeah. Yeah. Yes, because they're all, they really are all.
We know that people can summarize.
Yeah. Ready to give me a dry run through?
Oh, yeah. So you'll see Jacob Miller's in there now too. This mic is live.
Okay.
Okay. Unfortunately, they couldn't figure out how to.
I just turned it off.
Okay, perfect. They couldn't figure out how to get this to stay up there when you're speaking. Other to get this.
Oh.
So you have to actually pin it in order for it to show up on the screen over there. And so when he's done, when you're done and you're ready for it to go to him, then you just right click on it. And well, actually, I guess first you have to remove pin and then replace pin or whichever, and then you put him up there. Then I think when we go to,
I might just start it like that. I don't think I need to hit this on.
okay, well, it's up to you. He might want to see you.
Oh, he's seen me.
Okay, so remove pin. But then I'm thinking when we do the questions, and I've got a microphone that I can walk around and put in front of people so they can talk, then we could switch it to gallery so that we can see him and he can see.
Oh, yeah, good idea. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, is this then?
That's him. He's logged in.
But I mean, whatever is pinned is what he's seeing. Is that the way it works?
No, he can change his view to whatever he wants.
Okay.
What matters here is what's going to be up here.
Okay.
So when you're talking, you should be pinned.
Okay.
Because that's what the part of that we're inferring.
Okay.
And what you should start with. And then, yeah, remove or replace and switch to him, and then we'll do the gallery view when we're done. Or when we do questions. Does that work?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I got it. Remove pin and, all right. Yeah.
Don't get too crazy. You're in my account.
I'll try not to get carried away. What? Hey, Ken.
I'm still recovering. I'm keeping my.
Oh, okay. Because you have a cough
Not free
fit or
everybody
something.
else.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not. Recovering from this.
Okay.
Just looking at the project.
Yeah, that'll only be like that for a second. So once we,
Oh, you won't be on TV?
yeah, once we
I know.
stop, we'll
The
switch it.
presentation starts.
Happy New Year. How are you?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Good. Good. Are you in the office today? Yeah. Yeah. Excellent.
But you work from home.
Yeah, I'm just working. Yeah. Yeah. I was meant to tell you, Barb, she was a great candidate, but she had a medical issue. So she had
Oh, that's too bad.
That's too bad. Yeah. But she was awesome. She had forced to kid from Russia, everything. She speaks a little foreign language, but last minute she had to, because of the new medical conditions, she has to back up. So if you think about it,
Yeah, I will. Does it have to be a woman or can it be anybody? I don't know what the rules are for
anybody, like anybody.
Okay. I'll put some more feelers out, see what I can do. She's the only one I heard back from when I reached out to people at Princeton. But I'll see what else I can do.
Yeah. So Lisa, I want to be on the board.
She's too busy.
Yeah.
I think it's something she probably would enjoy.
Yeah, it is.
But she's, so she works full time. She's also working on her master's in mental health counseling with Drake right now.
Oh, okay.
And she's
Is that
finishing up
something new?
that program. Oh, she's been doing it now for about 3 or 4 years.
Okay. Yeah.
So she's doing it part time. She graduates this year.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
unfortunately, she's too busy.
Yeah. I didn't know Drake had that program. That's awesome. She's doing it.
Yeah.
The governor yesterday said there was a big, commitment for mental health here.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem now after COVID too. When China has the whole lockdown and with people going, really needing the hospital, which is more important than physical.
It's interesting to see how they're just shutting the whole city down. They've got 20 kids.
I mean, it's somebody, say, okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
Then everybody just execute. The execution in China is amazing. The decision is different. Here, I mean, the decision was very well crafted, but then a lot of time the execution a little bit, you don't have the resources, you don't have the people, you don't have the money to do it. But in China, it's like the decision could be super right or super wrong. Like 1 case, 2 case, I mean, somebody just had to walk because they couldn't do their own thing. And that's the whole entire situation, which is kind of bad. And you're joking, you just can't die of COVID. You can die of hunger or whatever, but you just can't die of COVID because that just doesn't look well for the resume of a legislator or like a governor or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see
North
how
Korea's been able to keep clean of COVID though.
well, they're not.
I'm joking.
It's so ridiculous. They're not going to the Winter Olympics.
I saw that.
Yeah.
That's got to piss China off.
Well, I mean, they are concerned, because they don't have the resources or whatever to keep that intact. So, yeah. But hey, thanks for having me in this event.
Oh yeah, of course. Glad you're able to come.
Yeah.
And do you get our emails regularly? Or you
I,
want
I
our list?
well, that's how I RSVP'd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I didn't see that the whole thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. This is the first in-person event we've had in probably 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Since before the COVID shutdown.
Okay,
So
yeah.
it's good to see people back together.
And how long have you been involved with this?
Just about a year.
Oh, okay.
Little more than a year.
Yeah.
I think they asked me to join the board like October, November of 2020. And that one I jumped on immediately because I've been involved in the group before.
Sure.
And I was familiar with it.
Yeah.
I knew that it was something I wanted to give my time to. So
And do you guys do like trips to Israel at some point?
we've talked about doing that before.
Yeah.
And we may in the future. We haven't yet.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I'm going on my second sister state trip to Yucatan, Mexico, in about 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but I'm still. It was a bunch of people going, but then they canceled it last minute because of COVID.
Oh,
But I'm still like, okay, I don't care. I'm still going. So
okay.
see how that plays out.
Are you the only one going?
Yeah. So I'm doing my. There's some partners down there that help.
You're a one-man show.
Well, like my Kosovo trip as well.
Yeah.
Which I was, originally 50 people. I'm the only person who got to end up going because of, large group cancellation, level 4 do not travel, at that time. But
Yeah.
I went nonetheless. So it was honestly one of the best experiences ever. Sometimes you just get surprised.
Yeah, I loved hearing about your trip.
Yeah.
So I'm just checking the time.
Sounds good. Hi.
Jacob, how are you? I don't know if you can hear me. We'll be getting
Doing well. How are you?
good. We'll get going here pretty soon.
All right. No rush. Whatever works for you. It's good for me.
Okay.
I'm here.
Right. What are you doing? I will. I mean, there's no hair problem. How do you? Well. Yeah, I know that.
Okay. Everyone, we've got lunches for you on the far table to my left, your right. So if you could just go ahead and grab a lunch and find your seat, we'd appreciate it. We'll get going. Let's see who can do it first and fastest.
This is when you need the gavel.
I know, I should have brought it. If you don't get a lunch soon, then we're gonna take them all away. So please go get one while you can. Oh, I wonder if that's from him. Yeah, he hasn't reached out to me either. I felt the threat of taking the food away. But that helped a little bit. What's that? Which one? Oh, yeah, I don't know. Mike, how are you?
You got him pinned on purpose?
Yeah. All right, if everyone could please grab their food and have a seat, we'll get going. get going soon here, Jacob. We're just waiting for people to get settled in. It's the first time some people have seen each other in a couple of years, so they're taking some time to get ready.
There's no worries, no rush. Good.
Jason Schultz. How's it going?
I want to finish the workshop. I like the box. Your email is nice. We're actually gonna try to do parking lot, find your license.
Yeah, that'd be great. When they get there, Jason, if they just go right to your table, just tell them to grab a lunch.
I'm sorry, Mike.
When the others come, just let them know to grab a lunch and come join you, because we're gonna kick it off.
Yeah, you guys.
Yeah. All right, folks, I think we'll go ahead and wait another couple minutes here.
No. Tom said, go ahead and start. He's in a meeting. He should wrap up shortly. He will be here for the wrap up.
Okay, got it.
Go ahead and start.
Okay. All right, now we're going to get going. For those of you still grabbing food, please feel free to grab a lunch and have a seat. If someone comes and joins you at your table after we get started, without grabbing a lunch beforehand, please let them know that they can grab one up there and grab something to drink and sit down. They won't be interrupting anything. So first of all, this is great. It's so wonderful to see people here in person again for the first time in a couple of years. Thank you all for coming and being here with us. My name is Charles Schneider. I'm one of the co-chairs of Iowans Supporting Israel. And for those of you who don't know, we are a bipartisan non-profit organization that was founded in 2013, the purpose of which is to help promote and facilitate support for the state of Israel and the Iowa-Israel relationship. We do have a few dignitaries who are here with us today, and we probably have some others who will be straggling in. But for now, I'd just like to acknowledge Lieutenant Governor Adam Gregg and Attorney General Tom Miller right there, and State Senator Jason Schultz, State Senator Brad Zahn, And as I said, I know we will have some others coming to join us later. And we appreciate all of them being here with us today and all of you being here with us today as well. The boycott, divestment, and sanction or BDS movement is a movement whose purpose is to encourage companies and nations to boycott, divest from, and sanction the state of Israel. Its proponents say that the movement is a nonviolent means to coerce Israel into recognizing a Palestinian state. The reality, however, is different. And with us today is someone who can talk about what the reality of the BDS movement is, what its real goals are, is Jacob Millner. Jacob is the director of the American Jewish Committee's Minneapolis-St. Paul office and associate director in AJC's Department of Regional Offices. AJC is a global Jewish advocacy organization that works to impact policy and opinion on some of the most important issues facing the Jewish people. Jacob has vast experience working with state governments on issues of BDS, anti-BDS legislation, and anti-Semitism. I think the first time I met Jacob Millner was when he was in Iowa to visit with us about passing an anti-BDS law. That law that we passed prohibits public pension funds from investing in and public entities from doing business with companies that choose to boycott Israel. And that's one of the things that Jacob will visit with us about too. He will speak for about 20 minutes and we'll open the floor to questions. We have a microphone up here, and if you have a question, please raise your hand. Tamara will come around and hand you the microphone, and you can ask your question into the microphone so that everyone can hear it and so that Jacob can hear it. So he wanted to be here with us in person. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it here with us, but we do appreciate him taking time out of his schedule to be with us over the noon hour today. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Jacob Millner.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Can everybody hear me okay?
You're on. You're live.
Good? Okay. Can everybody hear okay? Yes? Good? Okay. Excellent. Well, I appreciate the invitation, and I am sorry that I am not there in person to be with you. It's I do love Iowa. I love Des Moines, and I'm hopefully to get down there sometime soon. But if it makes you feel any better, I'm stuck in Minneapolis, where it's, you know, colder and snowier than it is, I assume, where you are. So with that, that was a wonderful introduction that Charles just gave, and it really underscores, I think, a lot of the important work that's being done to combat the BDS movement in the States. A little bit about myself. As Charles said, I head up our Minneapolis office, but I also oversee a number of our Midwest offices, and I do a lot of work nationally on policy as it pertains to Israel and fighting anti-Semitism across the country in different states. In 2015, the first state passed anti-BDS legislation, and that was actually your neighboring state, Illinois, passed anti-BDS legislation. At the time, I was actually not working in the Jewish or pro-Israel world. I was a lobbyist in Minnesota for the Minnesota Dental Association. So a little bit of a different skill set, but, you know, working with state governments at the time. And I enjoyed the work, but I didn't find it as fulfilling as I wanted. So I ended up getting connected to an organization which unfortunately no longer exists anymore. It was called the Israel Project. Some of you might have heard of it. It was in Washington, D.C. It was a communications firm. And they were working with a number of folks and national organizations on fighting BDS. Like I said, Illinois had just passed anti-BDS legislation, and South Carolina became the second state to pass anti-BDS legislation as well. And they were looking to help coordinate these efforts across the country. And it kind of just fell into my lap. It was a great opportunity, and I kind of ran with it. So the BDS movement, as Charles said, I assume most of you, at least some of you, are familiar. With the show of hands, can I just see who's familiar with the BDS movement? Okay, so it's a good amount. So the BDS movement, for those of you who don't know what it is really they claim to be a non-violent effort to stop Israeli aggression against Palestinians by using nonviolent means. But in reality, the BDS movement is really an effort to punish Israel and hold Israel to double standards. Years ago, they came up with a test to see if something was anti-Semitic or just anti-Israel. And I just want to point out by saying that you can certainly be critical of Israel like any other country. That is not outside the realm of good people. You know, Israel, like any country in the world, deserves its share of criticism. That being said, if you delegitimize Israel or you demonize Israel or you hold Israel to double standards that you don't hold other countries to, you're probably starting to dabble into anti-Semitism. And I think that's important to understand. So the BDS movement, hidden under the guise of human rights and the rhetoric of non-discrimination, all these kind of lofty values, they seek to impose economic warfare against Israel, which is a democratic and pluralistic and open society. And the BDS movement calls upon people who say they believe in Western values like freedom of speech and freedom of religion and freedom of the press and the rule of law to punish Israel because of the perceived human rights violations Israel has committed, they say. And so boycotting Israel for political purposes only, as I mentioned earlier, really does create a double standard. And this has been recognized across the world and in the United States for years, including multiple administrations. You know, going back to the Obama administration in 2010, I believe, even when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, the Obama administration recognized what ended up becoming is the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, which focuses a lot on how anti-Israel rhetoric can verge into anti-Semitism. So this is not something new. It's something that has really spanned across the political spectrum by and large, that people understand that BDS really does bear all the hallmarks of previous campaigns against Jews, and that the true aim of the BDS movement, as you learn more about it, is really not to create a two-state solution or seek for peace between Israelis and Palestinians or the Arab world. What it really is really an effort guised as peaceful in an effort to delegitimize and to destroy the Jewish state. So that I think is important to understand. It's also important to understand that BDS is widely perceived as anti-Semitic. AJC, which is where I work, as Charles said, does yearly surveys on Jews and non-Jews perceptions of anti-Semitism in the United States. And the 2021 survey, which was released last fall, showed that 82% of American Jews, I'll repeat that, 82%, more than 8 in 10 American Jews believe that the BDS movement is anti-Semitic. And that is on par, over 60%, about 2/3 of the general population, 63% also view the BDS movement as anti-Semitic. So I want to point out that, as we move into discussions about BDS, that the perception among the American Jewish community, and Israel is a Jewish state, is overwhelming. More than 8 in 10 American Jews believe it's anti-Semitic, and the general population at large, who's generally less informed about BDS, views it as anti-Semitic as well. So I think that's important to understand. But the ideas behind the BDS laws was that BDS, like I said earlier, really does single out Israel as a Jewish country and kind of leaves aside every other issue in the world and creates Israel as this boogeyman that's really out there to be punished. And so the idea about 5 or 6 years ago was to create laws in the states that would push back against BDS, but particularly discouraging companies from engaging in BDS activities, because the goal of BDS is to get international companies to really stop doing business with Israel. And as you know, I'm assuming this group is aware, Israel is a major player, especially in international technologies and high technology and agriculture technology. So the effort was to try to apply pressure on Israel through economic sanctions on Israel. And there's precedent in the past to have this, but as a number of states, we have a number of state legislators in here, and I see lieutenant governors here, but states across the country have anti-discrimination laws that say that you can't discriminate against people. I mean, there's obviously national laws that you can't discriminate based on race and religion and sexual orientation and national origin and all that. But beyond that, states across the country have laws that deal with state contracts and state pensions. A number of states, I'm up here in Minnesota, have laws saying, if to get a state contract, you have to, check all these different boxes on the checklist. You need to, hire a certain percentage of minorities, or you need to buy American-made steel, or you need to recycle X percentage of whatever it happens to be. And we think that BDS is and we believe because BDS is a discriminatory movement, states should not be contracting with or investing in some cases, companies that engage in this sort of discriminatory activity. And the idea here is to discourage companies from engaging in the BDS movement, to understand that it is discrimination, to help educate those companies about the BDS movement, but also to empower them to say to activists who might show up at shareholder meetings that no, this is discriminatory and we're not going to lose our contracts with the state of New York or Texas or Iowa or Minnesota or Illinois or Florida to appease some activists who want to engage in this activity. And as I said earlier, the BDS movement really does kind of put a new twist on the old anti-Semitism that we've seen. So people hear this concept of, people will hear the chants of, Israel has no right to exist. And I think it's important to remember a great quote by Menachem Begin back in 1977, where he said, and I want to read it, get it right. He says, "Our right to exist, have you ever heard of such a thing? Would it ever enter the mind of any Briton or Frenchman or Belgian, Dutchman or Hungarian or Bulgarian or Russian or American to request his people's right to exist?" And I think this is important to understand, because I would argue that no country in the 20th century, of all the countries that were created in the 20th century, no country has more of a right to exist than Israel, a country that obviously existed as a Jewish kingdom thousands of years ago. It's really a reimagination and a coming together of the Jewish people to their ancient homeland. But beyond that part of it, numerous times throughout the 20th century, from the Balfour Declaration to the San Remo Conference to the UN Partition Plan, and on and on and on, the legitimacy of Israel to exist as a country has been agreed to and agreed to and agreed to, beyond the obvious historical connections between the Jewish people in Jerusalem and the Jewish people in Israel, the land. So the idea of Israel not having no right to exist is anti-Semitic. And again, getting back to the HAC survey data that we have done, this is actually very interesting, I think. 81% of American Jews believe that the statement, Israel has no right to exist, is anti-Semitic. And 85%, even more percent of the general population believe that Israel has no right to exist as an anti-Semitic statement. So again, BDS movement, which does not distinguish between Israel proper or the West Bank, really does not, and if you listen to what their BDS proponents and BDS founders have said, is that they don't want Israel to exist. What they want is full destruction of the state of Israel. And that is, again, it's an anti-Semitic statement. Anybody that would say that they don't believe that the Jewish people have a right to a state should really go back and examine what their motives are with that. So, like I said, the BDS movement really, Illinois and South Carolina were the first two states to really push back at it. Illinois passed a bill in 2015 that said that the state of Illinois would not invest in companies that engaged in the BDS movement against Israel. And South Carolina took a different approach, which said that the state of South Carolina will not contract with companies that engage in a boycott of Israel. And since 2015, it has been a very successful movement. 33 states across the country, with a few more coming down the pike, hopefully in 2022, have now passed anti-BDS legislation or have anti-BDS laws on the books. Some are pension related, and some are contract related, some are both. But the point here is that the effort really did take off. And again, I want to say this really became a bipartisan success. States like Illinois and Minnesota and New York and New Jersey and California passed laws, as did Texas and Florida and Georgia and South Carolina and Arizona and red states and blue states both. So, and for the most part, the laws have passed with overwhelming majorities or near unanimous votes across the board. There have been a few hiccups across the way, but for the most part, like I said, the effort has been widely accepted and understood that the BDS movement is something that needs to be pushed back upon. One of the real great successes of the work passing anti-BDS laws, though, I will say, is that we were able to create an outreach, a broad tent of national organizations to work on this. So ranging from groups like AJC, where I work, or at the time the Israel Project, but groups like Jewish Federations in North America have been very involved. Non-Jewish groups like KUFI, Christians United for Israel, which I assume some of you know of as well, has been monumentally important in this. Other groups like Stand With Us, and to some extent the ADL and others have been important in these efforts. And what the important thing here is that it got the Jewish community, the mainstream Jewish community, groups like I said, like Federations and AJC and others, kind of on the same page. And while there might be some disagreements with the groups, and certainly some ideological differences between the groups, what the bills have done is really kind of get everybody on the same page to create at least a baseline understanding that BDS is bad and it's something that we need to be pushing back against. And that really has been an important part of the past 5 or 6 years here, really helping to understand, helping people to understand that the BDS movement is beyond, outside the tent of reasonable dialogue here. And it goes beyond just reasonable criticism of Israel, but it really puts Israel in a position where, of all the dozens of territorial disputes going on in the world, of all the different countries that are occupying other countries, and there's dozens of examples going on in the world, the focusing of one conflict, and the one conflict that happens to be the only Jewish state in the world, I think really has to examine the motives of people that pursue that. Iowa was an early adopter of this. I think we passed a law, if Charles remembers, I think in 2016. It was 2016 or 17. It was an early adopter of the BDS laws. It was Governor Bradstead that signed the bill. And he said, and I believe his quote from the Des Moines Register was, "I think it sends an important and very clear signal that we are not going to do business with people that boycott Israel. We think it's wrong, and we think that it's a prejudicial position that some countries and some companies have taken, and we're going to stand on the side of what is right and good." That was former governor of Iowa saying at the bill signing ceremony, which I was at, which I believe Charles was at, and others in 2016. And the bill passed overwhelmingly in Iowa as well. So I'm glad that Iowa has taken that position here on BDS. And as we've seen, the BDS bills do have practical implications on the ground. I'm sure some of you have been following what's going on with Ben & Jerry's and Unilever, which is a huge corporation. But Ben & Jerry's made the decision that they did not want to sell ice cream in the West Bank anymore as an effort to make a stand against Israeli occupation, they said. That being said, more than anything else, they just deprive people on the West Bank of ice cream. But what they are doing, though, is really, again, taking a stand. Ben & Jerry's will sell their ice cream in Iran and in China and in Myanmar and in countries around the world that are gross violators of human rights, but they refuse to sell with Israel, which is, a very pluralistic, free, liberal, democratic society. And we have seen states implement their anti-BDS laws now. So I can tell you New Jersey, New York, Arizona, Texas, Florida, and Illinois have all defunded their pension funds of Unilever stock here. And while I don't have any, I've heard that the folks at Unilever are very unhappy about this decision with Ben & Jerry's. Ben & Jerry's is a wholly owned subsidiary of Unilever, but Unilever allowed Ben & Jerry's in their buyout about 20 years ago some opportunities to keep their board as it comes to human rights and other things like that. So I think there's ongoing discussions there. But the point is that there have been real examples on the ground taking place of companies that have been trying to take positions, anti-Israel positions, and that has real implications here on the ground in the United States. So hopefully that helps push the conversation in the right direction. There's a few other states working on BDS this year. Like I said, 33 states now have anti-BDS laws. I think we'll see a few more coming down the pike this year. The next frontier kind of though in this work is anti-Semitism definition language, which I believe you are working on here in Iowa in 2022. And that really takes the IRA, which is the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which is the gold standard, really. Over 30 countries have adopted the language. Numerous sports leagues around the world have adopted the language. It's used in Europe, it's used around the world. Even the International Association of Imams have adopted the language. It was kind of the focal point of the President Trump's executive order 2 years ago on college campuses. So states have started to adopt it. Most recent state was Texas, adopted it over the summer. We were proud to have worked on that. Florida has also adopted the language as well. And now a number of states, including Iowa, are looking into bringing that language into code so that we can have a definition of anti-Semitism to use when anti-Semitism occurs. And anti-Semitism is certainly a pervasive problem. Jews account for about 2% of the American population, but in the last 2021 FBI survey, about 58% of all religious hate crimes in America were directed at Jews. So don't let anybody tell you that anti-Semitism doesn't exist. It for real exists, and that number is highly underreported as well. So that's kind of where we are right now. It's a lay of the land. But the anti-BDS, pushing back against the BDS movement has been a monumental success. It's going to require more work. There's going to be more efforts, like I said, like we're seeing with Ben and Jerry's and others, to single out Israel in the world. But because we have these strong bills in states, it's going to be harder and harder to ignore that discrimination. And hopefully we have laid the groundwork for greater opportunities to fight back and to fight anti-Semitism and anti-Israel activism as well. So with that, I'll conclude, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. We appreciate that. We do want to open the floor to questions. Is there anyone who'd like to ask Jacob a question to start us off?
Testing.
Hey, Jacob, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Hey, my name is John Norwood. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm now retired Sister City Commissioner in West Des Moines, and Israel was our first Sister City relationship area. Matyash, I had a chance to go in 2015. It was a wonderful experience. My question is, it's got a couple different parts. You know, I think the anti-Jewish rhetoric is, we also see that with the Muslim faith too. That seems to be growing. So I think there's some strength in addressing this universally. What would the critics say? I mean, what would be maybe a better way, not a boycott, but for those who feel that Israel, we're all struggling in terms of, this nation is struggling in terms of trying to become a better union, and Israel too. Help us understand what would be the positive way to express dissatisfaction or to try to help the two sides come to a better solution. And then the last part is help us understand, I think about some of the other parts of the British Empire where we have struggles, and you know, South Africa, I think, is a good example of a nation that had some similar issues, but maybe not. I'd be interested to hear how you differentiate South Africa from Israel.
Right, absolutely. Those are good questions. First of all, I would say that Israel represents it's a liberal democracy. 20% of Israel's citizens are not Jewish, mostly Arab, Muslim, Israelis. The Israeli government right now, for the first time in its history, has an Arab party, is part of the governing coalition. Arabs serve in the army, Arab and Muslims serve on the Supreme Court. They have full voting rights. There's Muslim parties, there's anti-Israel Muslim parties in the parliament, in the Knesset in Israel. those are citizens of Israel, full citizens of Israel. The issue, though, becomes issues of Palestinians who live mostly on the West Bank of Israel, of the West Bank. And those are not citizens of Israel. Those are still left up to, they have their own president, Mahmoud Abbas, who's currently entering the 11th year, I believe, of a 4-year term. They have other issues going on the West Bank. But in theory, that is supposed to be, based on the Oslo Accord framework that was negotiated in the 90s with the United States, that is supposed to be a future Palestinian state. And for much of the West Bank, the Israelis have no control over the West Bank. The Palestinians have full police control, full control over garbage collection, mayors. Like I said, they have an elected Palestinian parliament. They meet in Ramallah. Abbas speaks at the UN, at the General Assembly. They don't vote in Israeli elections. They vote in Palestinian elections when they have elections. That being said, a lot of the criticism of Israel stems from what are perceived as Israeli settlements in the West Bank, most of which are, for those of you who are well aware of Israel, most of them are settlement blocks right around Jerusalem. There are some outlying settlements, but for the most part, the settlements that you hear about are really just suburbs of Jerusalem, which in any peace agreement, any negotiator would tell you those settlements will stay as part of Israel in exchange for property land swaps with Israel, because it's basically, it would be too hard to move those. The issues, though, are that Palestinians that live in the West Bank, their government, their leadership is not good. Like I said, their president is in the 11th or 12th year of a 4-year term. They've not had elections in more than a decade. That's just the West Bank. We're not even talking about Gaza, which is run by Hamas, which is a wholly owned subsidiary. It's a terrorist organization. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. The United States, Canada, and the European Union do recognize them as such. Part of the issue, when you talk about South Africa, part of the issue is that you had a Black majority being kind of undermined by a white minority and having really no rights. Where in Israel, like I said, Israel is about 80% Jewish. The Muslim and Christian minorities have full rights, full voting rights in Israel. The issue becomes in the West Bank, and that becomes more complicated. And to answer your question is, I don't have a good solution to the conflict in Israel, between Israel and the Palestinians. That's above my pay grade. But I will say this, is that every survey, every person you've spoken to, and I've seen from both Israelis and Palestinians who live on the West Bank, and obviously Arab Israelis, is that singling out Israel and trying to create economic pressure on Israel is not the way to do it. What is the way to do is to create better understanding between Israelis and Palestinians, to create more business opportunities between what's going on in the West Bank and going on in Israel. And I've been to Israel now 10 times. I was there right before we kind of got shut down with COVID, and I was in Bethlehem, which is in the West Bank, and it's a controlled Palestinian city. There's no Israeli presence in Bethlehem. It is run by Palestinian police. It has a Palestinian mayor. It has a Palestinian garbage collectors. It has Palestinian police officers. And there's people that want to do business in Israel, because Israel, like as most of you know, is a high-tech hub. I mean, it is an international juggernaut when it comes to investments, when it comes to technology, when it comes to water desalinization, agriculture, etc. People want to build relationships, build wealth, build communities between the two sides. They're not interested in conflict. What they want is to make money. They're capitalists. And I think that creating opportunity, not punishing, but creating opportunity, creating more opportunities is what will really help bring people together. And I will say, right before she retired from Congress last year, Nita Lowey did pass successfully, and it was signed into law by, I believe, President Trump right before he left office. I think it was, I'm 95% sure it was President Trump. The Israeli-Palestinian Peace Fund, which is exactly that. It's money that the United States has set aside, I think about $100 million, to help create those partnerships between Israelis and Palestinians, business partnerships. Every survey has shown, by the way, when Israelis feel under threat by the rest of the world, they hunker down. They have a kind of a siege mentality, and they become less resistant, less open to more ideas for peace and prosperity. And so I think what's important here is to not try to punish Israel economically, which, by the way, as everyone here knows, doesn't really have much of an impact on the Israeli economy. The Israeli economy is very strong. I mean, look at the amount of capital and money and investment going into Israel from around the world. You know, whether or not Ben and Jerry's sells ice cream in the West Bank is not really going to make a difference. What it does, though, do is create a siege mentality among Israelis, that it's us against the world. And that is that's an inhospitable atmosphere for peace and cooperation. So my advice would be to create more opportunities for partnerships, more economic opportunities, more partnership opportunities, and people getting along, I think, is the way to go.
Hi, Jacob. It's Marty Hockenberg.
Hi, Mark. Aren't you in Florida?
I am not. I just came back.
Okay, I thought you were in Florida.
I'm in Des Moines permanently.
Good to see you, Marnie.
Good to see you too. Thanks so much. Just a little bit of trip down memory lane. When I was living in Minneapolis back in 2018, you'll probably remember when Bethel Synagogue had a DFL forum, candidate forum for those candidates that were running for Congress. And Ilhan Omar was included in that forum.
I recall.
Yes, how could anybody forget that? I was in the audience. And
As was I remember.
were you there too?
I was there, yeah.
That you were. So, and she sat there and she lied literally about her support for BDS. She disavowed BDS. I don't exactly remember what she said, but she basically said that she did not support it. And of course, at the time, we knew that that was not true. And then later on, she retracted in some form or fashion. And obviously, she does support BDS, as does Betty McCollum and a few others there, including the squad. So my question to you is, when something like that happens, you know, how do you counter that? Now that you're working with the AJC, you know, because that was very major, and you know, she was elected, and she's a problem, very anti-Israel. So what is it that you do or the AJC does to counteract something like that when it happens?
Thank you, Marnie. It's good to hear from you, Marnie. And I'm sorry that you're back from Florida because it looked like you had I would rather be there than here. It's much nicer. But yes, I remember that very well. I was there, as I know you were. It's interesting. So that was in 2000, what was it, 18, Marnie?
Yeah.
18? So in 2017, when Ilhan Omar was in the Minnesota House of Representatives here in St. Paul, we passed, when I was still at the Israel Project, but working with the local JCRC and other organizations, we did pass an anti-BDS law here in Minnesota. And it passed overwhelmingly, not surprising. But one of the critics of the BDS law on the floor, which you can go find the tape of if you're so inclined, was Ilhan Omar, not surprisingly. So when the question came up at Bethel Synagogue in St. Louis Park, Minnesota, I was actually surprised that she said that, because I expected that she would say that she supported BDS, as she said on the floor of the Minnesota House a year earlier. And as you correctly pointed out, she said that she was opposed to BDS. She said it was unproductive or something like that. She used the right phraseology, and then quickly kind of changed her tune on it, and it has since become a problem in Congress. You bring up a good question, which is dealing with members of Congress who we have strong disagreements. And first and foremost, it's important to remember that across the board, by and large, members of Congress are strong on this issue. There's a little bit more shade now, shades of gray, than there were, 10, 20 years ago. But by and large, for the most part, they're very strongly pro-Israel and anti-BDS. There are some members on the left, generally speaking, although we have some issues on the right as well, but on the left in this case, that really are critical of Israel, really do create anti-Israel arguments that do border on or cross into anti-Semitism. And how do you deal with them? I mean, we have tried to have conversations with these members of Congress. they're not generally receptive to groups like us or other mainstream groups, whether it's federations or JCRCs. And they don't really, I don't think that some of these members of Congress are interested in having conversations, nuanced conversations, and really understanding the facts. What we can do is just keep working on the members of Congress that we have relationships with, working with state legislators across the country, helping better understand and educate what's going on in Israel, what is anti-Semitic and what isn't anti-Semitic. Like I said earlier, 81% of Jews view, or 85% of Jews, over 80% of Jews view the BDS movement as anti-Semitic. Over 85% of Jews view the statement Israel has no right to exist as anti-Semitic. So I'll ask this group, if any other minority group, and I don't care if it's African Americans or if it's the LGBT community, whatever it is, if they came to you and said, listen, we view this statement as anti-Black or anti-gay or whatever it is, you wouldn't argue with them and say with them, oh, you're wrong. You know, most people would say, all right, if that's what the community thinks is racist, then that's what the community thinks. But when it comes to issues of Israel and Jewishness and anti-Semitism, there seems to always be a vocal minority that argues that we're wrong. And so I think it's important to remember that the Jewish community and the general community and the general population as well, by the way, views BDS as anti-Semitic, views the idea that Israel has no right to exist as an anti-Semitic belief. So it's important that we just really keep pounding the pavement and helping people understand that and putting laws in place that help protect the Jewish community and the strong relationship between the United States and Israel, because it's a mutually beneficial relationship that has strong and important implications, both economically and national security wise, for both this country and Israel.
Hi, Jacob. Tom McGovern, Christians United for Israel.
How are you?
Doing well. Glad we finally meet.
Yes,
Thank you for your help on our anti-Semitism bill.
absolutely.
Before I ask my question, I would like to recognize Senator Brad Zahn, who's in the room with us today. Brad chairs the Judiciary Committee at the Senate level, and he has introduced the Senate study bill. So Brad, thank you for your leadership there. So my question is twofold. One, when we talk about Ilhan Omar, she is working on an Islamophobic bill in Congress. Is that going to get any legs? That's my first question. The second question is, one of the most anti-Semitic things people can do is to deny the Holocaust. And it's happening not only among our population, but it's happening with our teachers in schools. What is AJC doing for Holocaust education at the middle school or high school level?
They're two very good questions. And I also want to echo my thanks to Brad for his work with working with the anti-Semitism bill. It's very important. And like I said, it's part of an effort that's going to be growing, hopefully, to help better define anti-Semitism, which will be beneficial to the second part of your question, because part of the International Holocaust definition of anti-Semitism actually does deal with Holocaust denial and how that is a form of anti-Semitism. So passing these bills would be one way to actually help your second part of your question. We're seeing more and more as we get farther and farther away from the Holocaust. Obviously, you know, we're moving on to 80 years away, and as survivors become more and more rare, it's important to remember that we need to do all we can for Holocaust education and help people better understand the atrocities of the Holocaust. So, you know, AJC does a lot of Holocaust education work. It's not necessarily the nitty-gritty on the ground education work that other organizations do, because that's not really our mandate. But we do assist in helping other organizations, whether it's Hillels, whether it's JCRCs, whether it's other local organizations, connect with the proper resources. We also have been very instrumental in other states, California in particular and others, working on ethnic studies language that's now becoming more and more of a problem. You're seeing these ethnic study bills And I'm not going to get into critical race theory or anything like that, but you are seeing ethnic studies bills promoted across the country now, which kind of downplay anti-Semitism, downplay Judaism, downplay the Holocaust, and try to talk up other issues, whether it's more recent Muslim immigration to the United States, whether it's other atrocities, or what it does is it tries to create kind of a universalism that no genocide is worse than the next genocide. And so we have to really be on guard against that. I don't know if it's an issue in Iowa, but I know in a number of states across the country it's becoming an issue. And that's an issue where AJC, with other Jewish organizations, has been really forceful in making sure that we are able to, A, ensure Holocaust education happens, and B, ensure that the anti-Semitism, people are aware of what anti-Semitism is, and that it's being taught in the schools properly. I think that is an important, that's kind of the next frontier we're seeing across the country. Your question about the Islamophobia bill, the bill is not going to go anywhere this year. That being said, we, AJC, did not support Ilhan Omar's bill. In theory, we support the idea of it, but it has to be really done very carefully because we don't want it to have to deal with Israel. We want, if religious hate crimes are one issue, but we really need to make sure that the bill is written in a way that's A, bipartisan, which this bill was not, and B, that would actually deal with hate crime issues, not deal with any sort of political rhetoric. So this bill is not going to pass, and I don't know if it has any hope in the future. But in theory, the concept isn't a bad idea of having someone monitor and combat Islamophobia in the United States.
Any other questions?
Thank you for your comments. I'm Bud Ockenberg. I'm one of the junior board. I want to make a statement of fact and then ask a question. In 2015, Pope Francis said that arguing against the existence of the state of Israel is anti-Semitism. In fact, the head and the tails of the same coin. From the AJC point of view, the narratives, is this something that AJC focuses on, the identity of these two hatreds of Israel and the promotion of anti-Semitism?
Hi, Bud. It's good to see you. I'm glad you're doing well. Absolutely, yes. We believe that the hatred of Israel oftentimes is anti-Semitic. And again, going back to the International Holocaust Remembrance definition, which is being promoted in Iowa, a lot of that does focus on how anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism bleed into each other. And it's important to understand that, as it's generally unfashionable these days in polite society to be a full-on anti-Semite, but it is not unfashionable, unfortunately, in some circles to be very critical of Israel and use Israel as the whipping post and creating falsehoods about Israel with general anti-Semitic canards, whether it's blood libel, whether it's the idea of Israel's profiting off COVID vaccines, whether it's what other crazy things are out there, Israel's poisoning the water of Palestinians. All of these are old anti-Semitic canards going back to the Middle Ages or beyond that have just been repurposed using Israel now as the Jew. So it's important that we pay attention to that when we call it out. And I will say that the definition of anti-Semitism being promoted in Iowa right now as part of this definition does directly head-on deal with issues with anti-Israelism and anti-Semitism.
I'm afraid that's where we'll have to end it. I'm sure there are other people who'd like to ask questions, but we want to be respectful of everyone's time, especially of Jacob Millner's time. I'd like to invite our other co-chair, Tom Henderson, to come up and close us out.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Jacob for appearing today, giving us some wonderful comments. Let's give him a nice round of applause. The elected officials who were with us today, both the statewide and the legislative leaders. I know your track record. You've all been supportive of Israel and we really appreciate your coming. We're hoping you'll come to future events as well, for those of you who are joining us today. The thing I want to let you know about Iowans Sporting Israel is that it is a bipartisan organization. I don't know if a lot of you know that Charles is actually a Republican. And I'm a Democrat. And we're actually friends too. And it's nice to know that by and large, political parties both of our parties can generally agree on Israel. And I want to always be that way, and I hope that you do too as well. So we really appreciate the support that you've given in the past. As a nonprofit, tax deductible organization, we do exist on donations. So if any of you feel like you're so willing to give, we always appreciate donations for our organization. We continue to do good work on behalf of the state of Israel. The purpose of our organization is to try to bring a closer relationship between Iowa and Israel in business, science, technology, and education. And that's our primary goal. We have so many good things occurring, as you know, in the business area, especially. We rely on Israel for millions of dollars of exports to that country, and I think we all realize how important they are to us going forward. And they're also one of the United States' strongest allies. And I think that's undisputed. So we do appreciate the support, and that's what our organization is all about. Steve Beckerman will be here on February 16th at noon. You're all invited to come back. Lunch is free. It'll be right here at noon. And we'd love to have you come and listen to him speak. He's going to talk about the nuclear talks with Iran. And I think we'd all agree that there's probably very few topics that are as important as that one right now, because when we think about possible threats of warfare, the stakes are high. So we hope that you'll come and listen and maybe get some information about what's going on in that area as well. That's all I have. Thank you again for coming today, and we really appreciate seeing all of you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Hey, folks, there are extra lunches. Hey, everybody. One housekeeping thing real quick. There are, hello. Hello. There are extra lunches over here on the table. If you know somebody that would like one or you want to take one, please do. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one.